So let's look at some news. So Uber for Nurses, this is a place where nurses can get temporary jobs, I guess, and it's considered quite valuable, but they had an unsecured database. And I was interested in reading this because a few years ago I did the same thing. I found University of Louisiana had an unsecured medical database with thousands of patient records. And when I told them, the day they told them, they took it down, but then a month later they accused me of hacking them and tried to get me fired and get me in legal trouble and everything for finding it. So that was annoying. I managed to get that straightened out. But this time, he found 86,000 records containing nurses' medical records just sitting in an open online database, which is very common. And he told them, and they, when he told them, and they said thanks and said they would take care of it, which is nice. And I guess they didn't like prosecute him or anything, but they didn't fix it. It just stayed open for more than a month. So that's pretty interesting. And, this is pretty common that people do this. So anyway, it's interesting to see. This is why a lot of people are reluctant to move their stuff to the cloud, thinking it's not safe, and they're quite correct. Very often people move their stuff sloppily to the cloud and end up exposing it to the whole world. When you do make a move to the cloud, you have to be careful. And cloud security is pretty complicated. I'm writing a series of projects now about how to secure Kubernetes, and it is pretty complicated, so you can see how a lot of people rush and don't get it right. So Trump pardoned all the people accused of January 6th, which is very disturbing because a bunch of them are obviously guilty of serious crimes. So it's very unclear what passes for the rule of law and justice in America under these conditions, when if the president likes what you're doing, he will just declare it legal. And a whole bunch of these January 6 people are also guilty of other crimes. And they are claiming that the January 6 pardon should extend to other crimes, even crimes committed after January 6. And they are winning on the grounds that it's connected to the January 6 investigation. So if they searched their house and found out like drugs or something, they'll say, well, you wouldn't have searched their house on January 6th, so that's fruit of the poisonous tree, and they're getting off on that basis, which might make sense if you accept the pardon, which is apparently legal. Many are in jail again. Yeah. Well, I don't know if very many are accused of domestic terrorism. I heard a few of them arrested on weapons charges and traffic charges and stuff. I'd be surprised if they're back in jail for terrorism because Trump has ordered the FBI to stop prosecuting white terrorists in America, which was one of their high priorities. He told them to deprioritize that because that's, of course, his base, and that's these people. And Trump regards them as his friends, so he doesn't want them prosecuted. And some of the violent terrorist groups are reforming that the FBI had broken up because they know that the current regime is in favor of them. So it's a very dark time we're going through. When we break all our fundamental principles and abandon them and become the opposite of what we should be. However, Trump's crazy desire to destroy the economy is so effective that I really think I'm comparing this now to Chairman Mao's Cultural Revolution in China. The leader gets in there, he has absolute power, but then he is so crazy that he does terrible things that erode his own support. So anyway, he may well be destroying himself. So, for example, one of the crazy things about the Trump administration is most of what they do is based on just complete falsehoods and lies. Like he came out here to California to open some reservoirs to spill the water out, pretending that would stop a fire in Los Angeles when it was 150 miles away and didn't even go to Los Angeles and just wasted the water. And he's still trumpeting himself as having saved us from that fire. Which is just complete nonsense. It's totally fake, like the people eating dogs in Ohio. He just makes up complete nonsense and then runs with it as if it's true. Like that he imposes tariffs, a foreign nation pays us and we get richer from doing that. Whereas tariffs are just a sales tax on our people. No money comes in. But he doesn't believe it and he doesn't know. And they said in his first administration, the problem working with Trump is that he doesn't read anything you give him and he doesn't listen when you talk to him. So you can't get any information into him. The only way to get any information into him is to get it to appear on Fox News. That's the only thing he takes information in from is TV. So anyway, that's what you expect from a reality TV star. The only thing he cares about is how he looks on TV. And nothing else is real to him. Anyway, so Doge is taking over Social Security. As you know, they're planning to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid drastically, probably to essentially shut them all down in order to have more money to give to the rich. And so Elon Musk moved in to try to take over Doge, and with a cost-cutting operation, what they're telling people on the right, which they're believing mostly, is that there's so much waste in the system that they can cut like half the money in Social Security and half of Medicare and Medicaid, and nobody will actually lose their benefits because half of it is being stolen with fraud, waste, and abuse, which is completely not true, but that's the story they're telling. And now as people observe their friends and family losing their benefits, I think they'll notice that's not true. Anyway, so that's the point. They came in here claiming that there's huge widespread fraud in Social Security, and so they offered briefings to tell them that they in fact have a lot of measures against fraud, and they limit the fraud, and the fraud is not that bad. But he completely focused on questions based on the myth of fraud, and this is what they're doing. They're deciding that there's a huge amount of fraud, barging in, taking over the computers, and just shutting down everything, claiming it's all fraud, without proving any of that. And so it's being done under false pretenses. They aren't finding any of this fraud, waste, and abuse. Even the amount they claim they found is trivial. So it's some kind of theater to distract you while they do something else. And so they're canceling the food purchasing for schools and food banks. This is something that you would think RFK Jr. would like. RFK Jr.'s whole thing is you need to have a better diet, and then you won't need any vaccines. Now, the first part of that is true. Americans definitely should eat a better diet, but that doesn't mean that vaccines don't work. But anyway, they canceled the program that was being used to buy healthy local food for schools and food banks. So that's going the other way. And so people that travel from Canada to America are now getting in legal trouble. So this woman from Canada who spent her winters in the United States came all the time, but Trump has now required people who visit for more than a month to register with immigration. And they feel very nervous about that, so they're cutting their trip short, and they say they're not comfortable spending money in America, which I certainly agree. Since America is now taking a hostile attitude towards Canada, we seem to be their enemy now with the trade war, and so I don't think if I was a Canadian I would want any Americans to get any of my money. They've taken American goods off the shelves in Canada. Canada's been our closest friend in the world for a very long time, and Trump is turning them into an enemy very quickly. So anyway, and it's pretty scary. There's another story here. This British tourist came to America, and she apparently had done this a lot of times. She comes to America, and she stays with somebody, sort of like an Airbnb arrangement, but instead of paying, she does like chores for them. And they decided that that's illegal. That's working without a work visa. So the problem is, once they decide that anything's wrong with your passing through the border, they then just lock you up. And they lock you up without telling anybody where you are. You don't get a lawyer. You don't get a hearing. You enter the American immigration system, which means you just wait forever in prison for a judge, and there's no judges available, and they're cutting the staff and cutting the funding. So you're just sort of thrown into limbo. And that's what happened to this person. It happens to a lot of people. That's the problem. They've cut the funding, so there isn't anybody to actually process these people. So once you're accused of like an immigration flaw, you can't get in. So these people are, we're going to have Europe and Canada are going to stop having tourists come here because they know it's too dangerous to come here. And I've seen plenty of people on Mastodon saying if you're going to having a security conference in America, the foreigners should refuse to come. Even if they can get in, it's probably too dangerous for them to come here. You'll probably get arrested on some fake charge and imprisoned, which is the reason I'm afraid to go to Russia. They kidnap people and hold them until they can trade them. And over here, it's for a different reason. We kidnap them because the Trump administration hates all foreigners, and they don't exactly hold them for ransom. They just hold them in a broken system where you have to wait forever for a judge to let you out. But anyway, it's clearly a very bad idea for any foreigners to come to America anymore, and will probably remain that way for years. Ukraine attacked Moscow, killed 2 people, blew up a lot of things with hundreds of drones. I'm saying this is probably quite logical. I mean, they need to really fight back against Moscow. They are ruthlessly destroying Ukraine, and now Trump has pulled all our support from Ukraine. We're on the side of Russia instead of where we belong, on the side of Ukraine. So we are pro-dictatorship, and anti-democracy now. In our foreign relations, we are on the wrong side. This is what would have happened in the 1940s if Lindbergh won. He would have made us on the side of the Nazis, where we are now. Anyway, that's all the time I wanted to spend on the news.